podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Oldhead Podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you could please do that before we get into the show, I very much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. Peace. I'm Majestic.
My brother, Justice Rajee.
Man, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. Good. You know, we've done, I guess we can date ourselves a bit. You know, this whole daylight saving times thing, you know what I mean? And, you know, daylight saving times to me is like Martin Luther King Jr. Like it was something that wasn't really discussed when we was younger, that then it's become like a much bigger thing. Like, you know, we was young, like Dr. King, he loved somebody. Do you want to love somebody, right? But it's like, you know, any complexities on his life, none of it was discussed. It was just like, it was Martin Luther King, he, you know, did stuff. Every January, we have these very complex conversations about capitalism, communism, FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, like all the, you know, patriarchy within the civil rights movement.
Right.
Like we're just having a much more complex conversation. I feel like that's what we're having about daylight savings time. Right. Where before it was like, set your clock back.
Right.
And you said, okay.
All I remember as a kid about daylight savings time is like, yeah, it helps the farmers. And I was like, okay, I guess. You know? They're later like, but now I've done see stuff that like, oh, that's car accident stuff and productivity in certain states. It was like all this. I'm like, word? Like the 1 hour shift is worth. I'm like, damn, this is a lot.
Listen, I'm trying to tell you. That's why I say daylight saving time is like Martin Luther King Jr. Like we just have so many complex conversations about it now. And I didn't know that like Arizona doesn't do it.
Yeah, Arizona doesn't do it. That's another one. I think
it's one other state.
I think Colorado doesn't do it too.
Yeah, it's like one other state that doesn't. It's out west, but there's another state that doesn't do it. So yeah, it's gotten very complex. Which you never hear about moving it forward, right? Like,
yeah,
we never had the conversation about springing forward. We always have the conversation about the harm of going backwards.
Yeah, I always feel like the spring one is the worser one.
That's a tougher one. Hell yeah.
You gotta basically go to bed earlier if you want to have a regular day. You gotta like be jacked up, man. I know for my kids, every year be like, damn, man, they're gonna be a mess on, you know, my beloved son who didn't always get to school on time. You know what I'm saying? He's be like, damn, man, this dude, he was just in a good rhythm, man. He gonna be off. You know what I'm saying? That's my guy, man. With love, freedom. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it's yeah, but it seems like such. I mean, even today when I got up, I'm in a different location for the world. I'm on the East Coast today. You know what I'm saying? Checking out the family and whatnot. And so my Airbnb got an alarm clock over there. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like, yeah, it's daylight savings time. But you look at the clock, you read the clock, it's correct. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, wait a minute.
Exactly.
It's not that late. Like you know what I'm saying? So now I look at my phone. I'm like, yeah, all right, that feels more like the right time. But you know, it still, you know, throws you off. You know what I'm saying? It's like clocks and stuff, man. It's very difficult. It's like having the clock 15 minutes in your kitchen or somewhere, and you see it before you leave the crib. Like, oh man, I gotta get out of here.
You gotta restart running and shit. Running outside, you get outside, and it ain't the time you thought it was.
Right, like, you get there and you get to the bus. Like especially if you got like you know, because I would always use it. Especially, I think when one of the apartments we stayed in, I think I kept my, you know, this was different time. We didn't have phones and shit, but I think I kept my clock 10-minute fast in my room.
Yeah,
so that if I rushed out, you know what I'm saying, when I got up to was it Forbes?
Yeah.
No, Fifth to go downtown. Okay. You know what I'm saying? I would be ahead of the you know, a little ahead of the bus. You know what I'm saying? So I know, but like I would, even though I knew I set the clock fast, like it, but it's,
You would forget, right?
you still forget in the moment. In the moment you be like, oh man, I gotta get out of here. I'm gonna be late. And then like you get down there and you're not late. And it shouldn't work, but it works. You know what I'm saying? As far as like stupid human tricks, it's what used to be an old, I think that was Letterman show. They used to have the stupid human tricks. I don't know. But anyway, long story short, yeah, so we wanted to jump off our conversation today with a post, and I don't know the brother, and I'm gonna see if I can reach out to him. I don't know if his Facebook or whatever is public, but I love you shared it with me, and it's from several months ago. But what he was building on and was sharing on, he was manifesting the idea of, he was articulating the concept of distinguishing between the idea of longevity. And how that shows up in the way that we frame what we're, kind of what we're doing, right? And yeah, we wanted to talk to you about that a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe
I think
pull me in where was a good place to start.
Sure. So the brother is Kevin Harden Jr., the brother out of Philly, a lawyer, works for one of the white shoe law firms in Philadelphia, engaged in the community. Part of the Barrister Association, and a real up and coming lawyer in the tradition of the quote unquote Philadelphia lawyer, of which there is a long tradition, not only in the white community but in the black community. Because when people hear the Philadelphia lawyer, you usually think kind of like white lawyers, but there's that tradition in the black legal community as well, a distinguished kind of history. So I think the reason I sent it to you and the kind of broader idea that, I guess I want to touch a little bit on and get your vantage point is this idea of, black men in particular in our relationship to the idea of success versus longevity. And his phrasing, and just to give some background to it, was switching from success to longevity because looking in our community and seeing how so many people wanted to be successful, but not many people were thinking about the concept of longevity with their success, right? And there's so many kind of points I want to touch on that I'm want to touch on, but I want to get your vantage point. And also for context, this brother was a former hustler, family, mother and father died from different ailments. And so he, like a lot of us in the community, see people, pass before what we may perceive as their time, and a whole host of other things that come from that, and really framing what does longevity look like in our community, right? So, I sent it to you. What was your take on just the top line idea?
Well, I think one of the places I start with is thinking one just the idea of adding some parameters of as I will frame them as sort of action and evidence in the moment when we're talking about whatever we're doing, right? So if you say someone is successful, right, in life or in the world, right, sometimes there's an assumption of that, like it's forever. So it's sort of like if somebody, I mean, I guess I would say from the very tropey, stereotypical concept of it, like, oh, this person made the league in the sport, right? They made a professional level in the sport, in that if they made it there, then everything else it's done. Like you've done the thing. You must be a success, like that is permanent, right? Where the reality is that if someone let's name the one with the probably the highest odds of getting into it, right? Like someone becomes a professional football player, meaning they just make it on a team. Not saying that they're starting or anything, they just make it on a team. Yes, they're going to earn a higher than normal average salary, especially for a 20-something year old person. Even though the average career was 3 years, I think it's actually slightly less than 3 years, right? So if you were saying the person, they did make a successful effort if they had been playing football their whole life since they was little, and they was playing it in the middle school, and they was a high school player, and they got to play maybe Division I or whatever level of scholarship level college football, and hopefully they got an education, or at least some promises. if they didn't go early, then they got in the league and they made it on the team, and man, it's great. They could have a totally successful NFL career, had maybe 5 years of above average earnings, and then met their sort of natural endpoint of ability, and they'll only be 26, 27 years old. Like, they got a whole, like, an entire life ahead of them, right? So yes, they would be successful within the frame of making that goal, but the long term, like, whatever you're assuming their life is like forever after that may not be true. I think maybe another way could look at it is outside of, because that's really, pro sports is an extraordinary, right, circumstance. So another way we might look at it is someone goes to either college and goes to trade schools. Because if I see another one of y'all post that nobody talks about trade schools, while everybody posts something about damn trade schools, and I love trade schools, and I think people should learn trades, I'm gonna jump through the internet and smack somebody. Like, every third person, anyway, I'll get back to it. I'm not going to go off the Rajee rails. I'm just tired of it. I keep saying somebody, nobody talk about trade school. Every day I see somewhere, if I happen to engage with y'all on the internet, where somebody says that somebody isn't thinking about trade school. Y'all are now the Tulsa of, hey, brother, do you know about Tulsa of issues? You know what I'm saying? Like, straight up, stop it. But anyway, right. So, if you know somebody, either they graduate in a degree in a particular field, what I'm saying, or they get done, they join maybe the local electrical union or the laborers union, whatever, and they finish a process where they getting on the job and they getting that prevailing wage. And you're like, word up, man, they success, man. Yo, what's his name, man? He out here, do. The success is not just achieving the point. The success, we sometimes can think the success is just achieving the point. The success is then, 2 years later, 3 years, like, sometimes we don't have the time component. And the brother, I think, was articulating very well in there that, like, if the success is just the moment of achievement and not the ongoing, like, experience of having something that you've done or you were trying to do, like, continue to live, right? Like, in the now, right? So it was like, yo, man, remember when so-and-so opened his store on, and I think a lot of us could probably peer into an experience, like somebody from your neighborhood or your community, opened up a clothing store or a bookstore or something, and and they got it going, and it was kind of cool. People was going to it, but maybe it only lasted for a year and a half. Like, it's not a failure necessarily, but it's still over. Like, it's dope that they got it there, but there is a question of if the idea of something that you create is to be ongoing, what is the time component to success? You know what I'm saying? And I thought that was, a powerful thing that he was speaking to, because he was speaking even like, brothers being engaged in the gray arts, the gray economy, where somebody might have a 3-5 year run where they the man in the streets, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? If people's money floating around and they got they doing things, they got cars, and then, I mean, hopefully they don't lose their life, right? But like, yo, remember what's his name? Yeah, man, he doing 20 billion years. You know what I'm saying? Or, all this other happened, or somebody snitched, like, you know what I'm saying? Or like they scooped up their whole crew and took them out of the community for 15 years. Right. So when we evaluate their circumstance, if the 3 to 5 years of living the high life, you know what I'm saying, with all the other things we understand that come with, the community effects, the personal effects of engaging in that world was someone's goal, or something that people would hold with esteem, why wouldn't we also frame the 15 to 20 years of pain and misery that followed it? Like, are these the same thing? And so, like, within the analysis that he kind of puts out there is to think about, like, I don't want to just do what I'm doing and do something great now. How do I start thinking about what I want to do with myself that has the assumption to me of a long time doing it? Like, I'm gonna be this person, I'm gonna be this way, I'm gonna do these things, but I'm gonna do these things for decades. Like, I'm not just trying to, like, have this like moment, so to speak, right? Sort of projecting in the future, as we would say, writing your history in advance. Like I'm gonna, be as this is, or I'm gonna do as I'm doing, or I'm gonna make these decisions with the idea that these are the decisions that should be happening for as long, as I can perceive and experience. So that was one of the things that.
So can I just add
Yeah.
on about that real quick?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is something that I've, saw and worked with young people in community. And now I think social media reinforces a certain mind state that is very prevalent in some quarters of our community. Not all quarters, but I think it has spread to more quarters now, frankly, than it did at one time. When you're in of certain experiences, we have this what I call an inverted reality in certain components in the Black community amongst Black men. Meaning this, in most communities, the most successful person is either middle aged and older,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's when people reach the pinnacle and height of their success. That's when their wisdom comes into bloom. That's when their experience comes into bloom. That's when their time of supporting and defending their community becomes more fuller, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to use kind of the gray economy to show it, but I think it's just in broad. When you think of like American business success, it's only now you think of people and people focus on 20-year-old folks, right? Up until very recently, the titans of industry were old people,
Mm-hmm.
usually old
Mm-hmm.
white men, but
Yeah.
but they were older people. Even in the Black community generally, older men, and again, I'm not talking about they had to be 50 and all that kind of stuff, 60, but older people were the people that you saw and were held in regard in a certain fashion for taking care of the community, even if they were kind of in that space between the gray economy and the traditional economy, right? But, so I'm going to say, particularly, crack shifted the idea of when you would be most successful. Crack shifted the idea from traditionally in the community, older men would be more powerful to like younger men became immediately more powerful overnight, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And every city is replete with the story of the young hustlers that achieved this huge notoriety, usually by the time they were between 25 and 30, paid in full. New Jack City, which was, kind of largely based on the Chambers brothers out of Detroit, and also kind of had some stuff from Felix Mitchell um, from Oakland,
Mm-hmm.
the JBM in Philadelphia, um, uh, what's his name down, Rayful Edmond in DC. I mean, you can just go every city, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Has this idea of these like young people who made so much money. We have countless Instagram pages dedicated to these people. When you look at them when they were at their highest, they were all kids. So it almost reinforced this idea of when are you most successful? The younger and the harder you go, that's where you get your success. And it was not a recipe for longevity, like the selling of crack is not a recipe for long-term selling of drugs.
Mm-hmm.
You've never heard of a 30-year-old crack kingpin. I mean, that sold crack for 30 years. There ain't one, right? You may have heard somebody sell cocaine for 25, 30 years. You may have, but
Mm-hmm.
James still heard somebody sell crack for 25 and 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so it created this model in this interest in replicating this idea of short-term success and not thinking about long-term longevity.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick, when I was working with young people, I never forget, there was a young person that came to knowledge and then knowledge building by extension to me, and really was saying to us like, hey, I have money. Where should I invest my money? Right. And I think he said at that point he had $10,000, right? That he could invest. He was running his block, running his section of the neighborhood. At that point, neither of us had 10,000. We probably had $10,000 together in the bank, right?
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. When we were faced with this idea of a young person who has obvious respect for us, is asking us to help him do something because we're the people he respects, right? He doesn't respect anyone else in the community to help him do that. And we ain't got no money.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But there's no one else that he can think about to help him do this. Now, that same young person is in a wheelchair and has an entirely different life today, which is this conversation of success and longevity. And I don't mean in a good way. I mean, he has an entirely different life. He was shot soon after. The money's gone. The hood creates new heroes every day, right? And there's a whole bunch of people who want the trash heap of the ghetto, the idea of ghetto superstardom. And so that really and so the piece I want to connect with it today is social media has created a space, I think, for a lot of us where it's like success means the event happened, right? For a lot of us, have you noticed how big people's weddings have gotten, for example? Right? How big certain parties have gotten, how big, just all these things that are so based in this idea of seeing it in the short term, right? Which conditions more of us to we want the praise of how people see other people in the short term. So then we mimic that behavior, right? It's not done with an eye towards longevity. So even now, like I'm saying, the experience I'm talking about was like for the hustlers and people that was in certain communities. But now you just have this whole broader success at all costs, huge thing. And to your point, okay, we see it today, but what's the thing about what we see in the future? You know what I mean? So
yeah, well, to build on that, like the conversation about like, and what I was thinking about the brother's piece, and I try to come back to myself with stuff like that. I mean, just so everyone understands, usually when someone writes something and it's reflective of where they're at in the world, it's not wrong to then filter and think about that in regards to your own life. That's how language works, and reading as a introspective vehicle, for learning and exchange of ideas. So, and I say that to say that I feel like sometimes when you do the thing of looking at something through your lens of like, well, what has my life been like? There's some folks who might challenge your sense to do that. So, for the record. All right. So anyway, we move forward. And when I started thinking about like, and it's something that I've even started framing out, ideas around, I guess, of some memoirish type writings about the framework for me, where I feel like I made the decision of like what I was going to be in the world as myself. And then as you make, you can filter that down to like, as a man, like taking self-responsibility, taking control of sort of the direction of where my world was going to go in those years and that time in my life. I wouldn't have looked at it as a longevity switch, in the point where I said, no, wait, my decisions, I look at it as the point in my life where like my decisions have ramifications for my future and what I'm going to be. But also, in terms of my own consistency of who I say I am and what I practice. And so therefore I need to attach these two things. And, and part of that is, when we were young and we were on our own in a couple of years, I was like, yeah, there's certain stuff, I still want to have fun. I want to go to, we want to go perform on a show and then dance after the show and have an adult beverage or two and whatever. But there are, I could not, I never could stay in the place where I thought I could escape the so-called limits of the risks that I was taking, even though I was still, living in the moment and trying to have, do the things you do when you're 23. Right. But where I got to understand that, I like, no, there is a line for me. Like there is a spot where I got to go. Yeah, I'm not doing that. You know what I'm saying? With you, or I'm not taking this particular substance. You know what I'm saying? Due to what the risk factors that I saw and how it could impact my ability to keep being in the moment who I needed to be and being who I needed to be in the future, or being here, quite frankly, in the future. Right. Like, I think that was a really interesting phrasery. And then even though, as the ball moves, right? And that's the thing I love what the brother was saying, because he was like, this ain't just about being young and dumb, so to speak, right? I mean, I don't think that was his language, but that would be what I pulled. But he was speaking about, it was grown men over 50 that know they need to get certain medical checks that like that are maybe still trying to do or engage in stuff that you could do when you're 22 and your body can get back fast, and you still trying to do all that stuff at 55. It's like, brother, like what are you doing? Like, man, you better go get that, you know what I'm saying? Get that your knee hurt, man. Go make sure is it structural, is it repairable, or is it something you just got to learn through physical therapy and lifestyle, right? Like settle, right. Don't just be out here doing because in the moment you're trying to get this thing you want, right? Even older men are not immune or exempt from this line of thinking, even though your references may change, because you'll get people that'll go like, well, I don't drink, smoke, and I don't do this, and like, kind of this classic sense of things that are risky, right? But you may have all the other stuff. You may be emotionally unavailable to the people in your life. You might be an obstinate force in your workplace where nobody can really get nothing new done because they don't want to talk to you. So they find ways to navigate around your obstinate, no fun ass to get something done that is good, just because, like, these are real behavior sets that sometimes we can have and be ingrained in and can be detrimental to our well-being, right? Because you can't see a world, if you're, say, the head of an organization, since you can't see a world where you pass the leadership and authority of that organization into anyone else, you don't even understand how to build the infrastructure to make sure that there's some new leaders coming up, to take over when, and that you have a point where you need to stop being the leader out front every day. Doesn't mean you lose your value in the community and society. It just means that no, somebody else, you tip into 65 at some point. I'm like, yo, fam, like, can you share the authority? Or do you have someone ready to take the wheel? If you holding on tight, squeezing it like it's no tomorrow. Like, these are real things that happen, within. And I'm thinking about this from the, sometimes we suffer as a community at the hands of bad institutions and structures. And, these are some of the things we are trying to counter to change our society are based on creating institutions and structures and groups that can hold our ideas and nurture them and help them turn into, or be in the moment, the things that provide for us from not just a I guess you could say, like, abstract, mental, emotional, social kind of view, but they also, like, provide housing and make sure you have clean neighborhood and have equitable access to the elected officials. And, like, these are real things too, that you actually have control over infrastructure, right? Like, these are, but like the conversation, I don't know if people always see that there is a place in there where one knows, like, oh, wait, hold up, man, I can't be the only one that sort of has some leverage, that impacts the positive outcomes. I need to make sure this gets distributed to others if I'm the one that so-called has the leadership. Go ahead.
And so, no, just to add on, I think that's part of the switch, whether it's happening as a 25-year-old or 55-year-old, or it's happening as a collective, right? If it's, regardless of what that is, I think that's a part of when the broader institutions have failed you. So you have to have a different mindset, right? Or you feel like you're forced to have a different mindset because the broader institutions have been generally unforgiving, right? So yes, if school has failed you in your mind, right? And maybe if the resources were not there to provide you with a space to grow how you wanted to grow, and the recreation centers weren't open, you develop this, hey, it's I got to do what I got to do, right? And it starts to develop this very individualistic mind state as far as it pertains to what success looks like, because you're not being conditioned by institutions for the give back. Now, I'm talking about the broader institutions. And sometimes, and so even if you're a 50-year-old man who doesn't want to go to the doctor because no one understands how it feels to be a black man who doesn't want to tell somebody that you're hurting. And if someone in your family doesn't understand what it means to do that, if the people you're around don't mean to do that, and then you go to the doctor and the doctor is not culturally responsive, and the doctor don't understand what it means for a black man to come in and tell somebody he's hurt when he can't tell anybody he's not hurting anywhere. So the last thing he'll come and tell you is that his shoulder been hurting for 6 months, right, which could be something way more important, right? But he can't come and tell you that because he has not been allowed to show any kind of response to a challenge, right?
Right.
And so because those institutions do it, then we create dysfunctional institutions internally. To your point of, hey, I got the power. So longevity is about me. Longevity is the success is me. I'm not thinking about longevity because I'm not practicing distributive leadership, right? I'm not going to practice, and when it's not an avocation of the gray economy. But history is replete, and American history is replete with examples of how people did use the gray economy as a means to go mainstream.
Yeah.
Research, anyone listening to this already knows that. But you know what I mean? Like, so again, in these models, because the institutions don't reinforce the different behavior, and all the people who look successful look like they're using the behavior which creates the short-term success. So if it's the CEO that doesn't pass down leadership because they believe that they believe it's them.
Right.
If the person that's getting money for 5 years because of the breakdown of all of our institutions now believes that they are the adults. You got certain situations where, back in the day when we would say somebody was our old head or old timer and all those kind of things, those were always things of positivity. Like those were always like, honorable things. If you notice when the young people call somebody unc and auntie, that shit's not like, yo, I'm listening to you for your wisdom. It's usually a transactional relationship when an old person's coming to you for something.
Yeah.
Right. And so again, I'm talking about these institutions that kind of break down, internal institutions largely, but not always, just because of the broader institutions that have conspired to harm people. But the thing it does, it creates an ecology of fear, right? It creates an ecology of that short-term mind state.
Yeah.
That you actually have to be purposeful in breaking through. And it's not just the brothers and sisters got to come together, right?
Right.
It's actually going through that thing, having that experience, and then talking to other people who are also having that experience to then model the behavior and then create institutions that model the behavior. So that it's not up to every individual person to have the experience to say, hey, I was the shit at 25. And again, I ain't just talking about the dope game. I'm talking about anything.
Yeah. No. Well,
I look good. I look good at 25, but I was not thinking about longevity. So I don't look that nice at 50.
Right.
Right. I am not healthy at 50 because it was about looking good at 25. It was not about being a good looking 60-year-old man and a 60-year-old man that could run miles,
Yeah, no, but I think you touched on something there that's powerful, because it's something I will hear people make statements about age, right? That then will reference this like preferential to be their younger self, which you never go back. Time goes one direction as we experience it, right? I'm the physics people. I don't want to hear from you right now. We experience life in one direction. we younger and then we get older, right? And you know, you know, it's great. Like, all right, I guess give a personal example. So my hair is now long again, right? And I had cut my hair off for a number of reasons, and I decided to go on a long stretch of not growing my hair out. The timing and other conditions at the start of the pandemic said, well, let me see what's happening up there, right? Part of those, one of those considerations was I fitting in a way that was like that maybe if my hair grew back, I wouldn't want the way aesthetically for it to be, right?
Right.
Keep it 100. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Because we've all, know somebody with the various stages of the bald patch and the locks. Now there's a whole consideration of, we can get into around like, look, it is what it is, and I'm not here to judge you if you got a big bald spot and you got locks. You grow where you can grow. But in any event,
Right.
for myself was like, well, I wanted to see what the conditions of my own thing was to see if I'm comfortable, right? And then, my hair starts growing and it gets a little longer. I'm like, oh man, look at that. And it has, it has some nuances. It's not the same as it was when, I grew my hair from was it 96 to 2001, right? My hair would look different, at that age. And the hair, the color of my hair, the texture, the density of the follicles, I imagine, was a little bit different in some ways, although not too many. But the the evaluation of it was, stuff you evaluate when you're over 40 years old. Like, is my hair long enough for this? Does it, how does it feel? Does it feel different? Does, what will people think I'm doing growing my hair at this age, right? Because there are dynamics, within uh especially a black community, but when you make any change about your life in at any phrase, but definitely when you get older, people start making assumptions. Either it's about you wanting to be younger or something happening in your relationships. It's always, these characterizations of your choices. And and I had to go like, all right, man, like, if I'm gonna do, long hair, man, I like having my hair when I had hair. And the only thing that was keeping me from growing it back was really more of the care and the maintenance and thinking about, is this the right thing for me at the moment? And
Right.
if I made the decision to grow my hair out because I was going through, some sort of crisis of confidence, I was like, I want to be like because now everybody got locks. When I used to have locks in the 90s, I mean, it was more people, but usually you had locks in the 90s, you had to be down with certain stuff. You know what I'm saying? You couldn't just, people assume
There were
now.
values. There were very explicit values attached to it, unless you were from Miami or something.
Yeah, right. And then like, that's changed. And that's okay. I'm not mad at that change. I'm just acknowledging that it's changed. And so then though, like me making that personal choice, when you engage with folks and you start to listen to like the way they talk about their look or their style and how much it's tied up in how they perceive their age and what they should or shouldn't be doing at their age. Or, you know, when I watched somebody shared a clip and it was from like what's that show? The show used to come on BET with the kids talking in the 90s.
Teen
And
Summit.
and I saw all the girls' haircuts. I was like, oh shit, I remember all them haircuts. Well, nobody wear them haircuts no more. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, and if a woman I know especially who was a kid at that time wore one of those haircuts, I would be curious as to why she went back to that, 1990, 91 flavor. You know what I'm saying? But I
Right.
also
You would
would
think
go,
she's trying to go right. People think she's trying to go back to like
what she
that
was when
time.
she was 16. And I'll be like, I don't know if it worked the same. But then the other end, there's a part of me that'd be like, well, look, if you like it, I love it. You know what I'm saying? Go on, do you, baby. Like that's your life. You know what I'm saying? That's how you want to flex it. You want to do an asymmetrical with the bob, you know what I'm saying, or the curl thing and the little joint in the front. Like these are all your own decisions. But the adoration of sort of a youth as like sort of this access point or proxy for like doing well is unhealthy, as is the like kind of the idea that like it's not really legitimate until you do it when you're old, right? It's like, oh man, if you're older man, you shouldn't have your hair, this way or that way. And it's like, look, you should do what works for you,
Right.
and that is comfortable. But the thing in and of itself is not, just an indicator. It's not just, stationary that way. And I think I guess is another example had this conversation with my daughter, and she was using a definer of the idea of homecoming that yeah, this is what we call it. And I'm not gonna, shout out the lie. I'm not gonna let you be on on the internet talking to me in live time so you can defend yourself. And I just was sort of going, I hear what you're saying, baby. I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't think the way what y'all might be saying to define the idea of homecoming today, I think there's a much longer cultural tide across society that would, I don't think it's going to replace the whole word of saying homecoming, uh, just because it's like more people will, if you say a homecoming, they'll go, oh, like when people come back to their school or their alma mater, right? Where if you say the other thing you were saying, they might ask like, is that the name of, is that like a music event? Is that a food festival? Like,
Right.
Right. But that is also, part of that is me being old man, rough, get off my lawn. Let me challenge what the 15-year-old is telling me, but there are a part of it that I feel like I'm like, I don't know, baby, I feel like I'm gonna be right. But then again, maybe she might prove me wrong. Maybe everybody will shorten homecoming down, you know what I'm saying, into some other phrase. But like the conversation about the challenge to me was the most important thing to have with her, is that there's stuff that you're going to be saying, and I'm trying to think of something that we was all into when we was 15, 16, that is like, yeah, I ain't heard nobody say or do that in 30 years. Well, maybe not 30, but I mean, in a long time, because what is salient for us in the moment can feel like it's forever, but it isn't always forever. But then there's also stuff that is like, the particular styles of living don't always last, but having a certain style does last. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
um,
Right.
if you get into music, like, I think, there's different music that the music itself changes, but the enjoyment of music is the many thousands year old, technology that we all still get into, right? Like how we're doing it,
Right.
what's in it, right? So
And
that to
its
me,
relationship to the past, right?
right?
Its relationship, and not just to the past in the context of some mythical past, but of the most recent past, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because some, things that occur often are in relationship to what did come before it.
Yeah,
Maybe not in relationship to, like, the blues songs, the blues laments of Africans on plantations, right?
right. Mm-hmm.
But it's connected to something that came around it. And, so I think for me, the idea of the longevity conversation was really like an interesting take on what becomes normative amongst a set of people in responding to their conditions, and
Mm-hmm.
how we create norms that make all the sense in the short term,
Yeah,
right? Based on your conditions, it makes all the sense. So this conversation, like I said, because of our institutions, whether it's a kid that's not doing good in school or someone doesn't trust hospitals, in the short term, your decision makes all the sense. And the very kind of insidious nature of some of this stuff is the fact that your decision, which we know to be long term harmful, is actually entirely practical and logical in the short term,
mm-hmm.
right? It is entirely practical and logical to say, hey, you know what, this is probably my only way I'm gonna get paid, even though this has a 3-year run at best if you don't get shot or arrested. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
even if I mean, think about it. Even if someone said, hey, I made $1 million, I was outside. Okay, cool. If you were fortunate enough to have $1 million and then you went to jail for 20 years, that's only $50,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you need lawyers. So even someone that did something like that to save $1 million, which is the top 1% of people who go to jail,
Mm-hmm.
still long term, it's a challenge, right? But it made me think, and it's a challenge, I think, to folks that, he was using black men. I think he used everybody, but I do think it's also much in the tradition of Ask Your Oldhead, like to really think about the black men around them, everyone to think about the black people around them, and to think about, have they turned on the longevity switch? And then to say, are you helpful to them turning on the longevity switch, or are you harmful to them turning it on? And if you are helpful, keep on keeping on, brother. Keep on keeping on, sister.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you're harmful, maybe stop a bit, pause a bit, and think about your own thinking about, you know, um, people who have been affected by these institutions.
Yeah. One other thought I will add, and I appreciate that point you elevated there. What like I always think about, and this somewhat comes from my days, working with people, doing human people work, but also personal stuff, my own self. And it's like if I have a situation that I need to handle, I have a circumstance, and it's like, all right, I have a solution that'll help me do this thing, or if it's I'm short on rent, or this bill ain't gonna be paid, or something even extraordinary, that you got a family member or a friend that's been in a car accident or something, and you're trying to get them some support, right? And you got to go, all right, I could do this right now, right? And anybody that knows me well knows I'll let you know when you ask me for help. I got you for this 20. I probably can get you for another. You sure you don't need 40? Because I probably could give you 40 right now. I can't give you $40 every month though, or every week, or every 2 days, or like I'm not going to commit to do something I know I can't sustain. And
Right.
and I think about that with longevity. That is like there's sometimes we make in the need to survive of our communities, our families, our personal self. We'll try to do stuff that you know if it was just a prefrontal cortex decision, you'd be like, I can't keep that up for 10 years or for some, what I mean, for some uncounted amount of time. But you're like, well, I'm going to try to do as much as I can for as long as I can. And then we'll see what happens next. Right. Like, and that's a calculus that a lot of, an equation, so to speak, or algorithm um, that a lot of men, I would say definitely in our personal lives that like became a part of your sort of analysis or equation of who you are. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna do these things as hard as I could do them because that's the way you got to do it. And then the effects, the cost of trying to sustain that, they get to always get to their end point where either the body breaks down, the mind breaks down, or the circumstances and conditions around you break down, and what you were trying to do, in earnest,
Right.
just no longer keeps working. Right. And then to me, the part of the longevity conversation that I would like to see is for folks to again, not never just not just copping out of doing certain stuff in our society. Because I hear people on the folks that just basically before we even spend some time thinking about it, is like, no, I just ain't even gonna try that. But to go like, yeah, if I guess maybe as a popular example, there's a story out of Louisiana where the fathers got a program, and the fathers started being in the school and engaging with the kids, kind of, every day to that, at least as it was reported, was as a response to some of the activity that was going on with the school, with the kids, especially like fighting and whatnot, right? But what one may lose in there is you don't think about it. They got like, if the reporting is accurate, like 40 individuals volunteering to be in the school every day, right? So it means it's not one person, it's not 10, not 5 people. It's enough people that they hopefully can sustain that effort to adjust the way the culture functions. And if when you're talking about longevity, with things and change, like we got to keep the people part where you're like, we need enough people to adhere to these values or these behaviors or this set of things that we're going to do so that we can sustain it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And if you don't have enough people to sustain the change that you want to do, it doesn't mean don't make the change. Just understand, like this may only last, like the less people that are involved, the more fragile whatever the remedy you've put in place, because it's going to become hard at some point for somebody in there to keep going. They're going to need a break. They're going to need a stop, or their life is going to change in some other way where they're like, yo, I have to do this other competing commitment. And so like really the power and the importance of collective action, and then of developing that amongst each other, right? And with any sustained change in our society is always there, right?
Right.
I applaud and I love and I respect those who, through the temerity of their individual intestinal fortitude, like do some ill thing, right, or make some ill stuff happen. But if we see whatever they've done as something that is, if it's going to be long-term systemically changed, other people have to have some of those ideas for it to root. You know what I'm saying? So if we look at civil rights movement, we look at social movements, that there may be a leader who is elevated to sort of figurehead of that work, but the ideas that the leader is articulating at some point, at least some good percentage of them become a part of all of these other people involved and a part of what's happening there. You know what I'm saying? Before they actually start to have impact. So, yeah. But also I was saying on longevity, like, man, put that in. I mean, I'd let her come back to that. I mean, I think we probably could get into like, you know what I mean, maybe not today, but like discrete activities that one does to try to be, you know, to frame something in longevity. You know what I'm saying? And having that as a value. I definitely like the idea of toasting to that, you know what I'm saying, which I think the brother put in there, or maybe it was in the headline of the post.
Yeah, no, he did. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah.
So
absolutely.
Unless you got something else on that. Something else happened this week. And I guess in a sense we could I mean we'll just go where it goes. So yay, Kanye, the artist, you know what I'm saying, formerly known as or
formerly known as
had a Drink Champs interview, and I got maybe like the last quarter, little last third to wrap up on it, but I got enough into it that I got a sense where Mr. West, Chicago's own, you know, had to say in this particular piece. And there's some stuff, and I'm gonna say a couple things just to frame this conversation, or I don't know, I'll let you go where you want to go. But for me,
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Me discussing Kanye is in no way an endorsement of like any particular idea Kanye has about the world. It is not a stamp of approval for any behaviors or actions that he has made in his life or in the public sphere. However, and with that, you know, my own, I guess if I had it written on a single paper, my editorial viewpoint on how I engage, especially talking about Black people in the public space, just doesn't involve certain behavior sets. So if at any point in this you have the thought like, but why you ain't talk bad about him for whatever the thing may be, understand that is not just not the way I approach Black people in general. Is that within my what limited media capacity that I have, that I only use it to be critical in a way that is not, that as I see it, somewhere for us both to move forward with something. So, you know, just want to say that in case anybody's listening. It's like, yeah, I mean, hope Justice give Kanye the business right now. I'm not here. I don't even know that man personally to be
right. That's right.
Making some kind of personal assessment of him.
So. Just a real quick, I think that's something to be said, that we don't personalize people we don't know.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
So, yeah. Where's something that you would like to?
So there's so much there.
Bring us in.
It is not often you can watch something that's so wild that like you really go back to think about it. Like, yo, did he really say that? Did he really think that? Like, you know. So one, I want to start with the top line thing for me through watching it, and I think is an interesting part of this, and it is the conversation about mental health. He talks about it in the interview in ways I think that is somewhat refreshing, because he talks about being pressed. He talks about when he has a, you know, he has a gentle mental, as he stated.
Yeah, he did.
But just the fact that we're dealing with, and kind of coming to the fact we're dealing with, you know, I don't think it's a stretch to say, even though I don't always, okay, I know that some of Sunrise music, right, for example, the jazz artists, avant-garde jazz artists, was absolutely genius. Mm-hmm. It is not something I would like to listen to all the time.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's not genius. But genius and kind of sometimes music that you want to hear or art that you want to see sometimes is different, right? Mm-hmm. So in that sense, I would say that Ye is a genius artist. I don't want to listen to his music all the time. He is getting to a place where what he is doing is more important than what he's producing. And then that's when you become, to me, like a singular figure. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because Donda, you can have it. I mean, last couple albums, right? Yeah. But again, it's just like Do you like every John? Did you like every John Coltrane album? No, you didn't. Did you like every Miles Davis album? No, you didn't. Did you like every Richard Wright book? No, right? Like we have to be real about this. But again, what he's doing in the conversations we're having are more important than the fact we're okay with listening to someone who we know goes through bouts of depression, who we know can get manic.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think is an important place for music culture, but it's also an important place for Black folks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because we don't want to have those conversations.
Yeah.
We'll want to charge it to other stuff. So I think that's kind of one place. I mean, there's an honesty that lives there that obviously I think again is tied to his mental health in a sense of being vulnerable that we are not used to rappers having.
Yeah.
So if he's saying like, yeah, man, Tata, Jay-Z's homie, he used to look at me and he used to scare me. So every time I get mad at Jay-Z, I get mad at Tata too. That's just hilarious. It's something that people feel and it's what's happened in people's personal relationships. But the fact that he said it, right? The good, bad, or ugly, the fact that he said, just Blaze, you copied my style. Now, what's interesting, and again, I didn't necessarily take it as far as he did. I did make me think, man, when's the last Just Blaze beat I heard? It did make me think that.
Mm.
It absolutely said, man, that's weirdly enough, that's an interesting point. And as an aside, even though, again, he says wild stuff, Bink, who was the other producer on the album, chimed in and agreed. Now, take that for what you will.
Mm.
I do know that time I heard Bink song. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've heard Bink continue to produce.
Yeah.
So I just, again, and like sometimes just because it's verbose and it's said doesn't mean that it's always necessarily wrong. His statement of like, Jay-Z selfish, right? And everybody's like, ooh. He said, Jay-Z selfish, man. Come on. Right. But again, this vulnerability and the openness to say stuff that we do not connect with what rappers normally kind of get into about themselves and about others. His vulnerability about his wife.
Yeah.
Again, say what you will, but like, hey man, this dude, his vulnerability about Drake. Man, this dude's playing psychological warfare with me.
Right. When that was interesting when he talked about like they're playing this song, at your kid's birthday or your kid's party, and it's that's sort of about me. That's about my family. Like that dude, that's different. Like and to bring up actually even his old, it was a very interesting characterization when he spoke to that like, one like saying like when Jay had, I guess, whatever that song, I don't even remember the song, but like Jay had a verse on there, but like Jay didn't know that they was having issues, whenever that was recorded. And then,
right.
But then the whole piece of that, there was conversations had, right? That like he engaged that you can see certain stuff within the context of like making music that's business, but there's still there's a line, there's a limit, there's a place where you shouldn't go. You know what I'm saying? And that with that like, again, like I appreciated him speaking to that. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't, like, and that there are certain things like it's all good for like you, like if you want to go on the internet, you don't necessarily know me and you disagree with something I did or said or am a part of, I'm kind of like, all right, whatever. But if you know me and you ain't come talk to me about it, or vice, you know what I'm saying? Like I got a real issue with you. Cause we know each other. We ain't talking about people that don't know each other. We talk about somebody that know each other, right? Like, if you have an issue with a particular public individual, I mean, it's reasonable for you to not like them. To me, myself, I wouldn't endorse you getting your blood pressure all up on somebody that you don't know personally though. Cause like at some point it's like, yo man, you are taking all the pain. for this
That's right.
particular, like they're not hurt by your blood pressure going up because you spent, I don't know how many hours last night reading news articles and getting more mad about them, or, going on a furious, 45-minute Twitter rant and or argument with people who would defend them when you went out to, what I mean? Like, these are choices that we make sometimes in these things that engage, especially for people that are public figures or celebrities, and they come these sort of proxy for, at least as I see it, for like our values and how we see ourselves, right? It's probably one of the, I think, interesting things that social media creates is then the space when that you go out to say something about it in whatever the scale or size of your particular platform to do so. Meaning, if the people you tweet to, or it's only like 400 people that and 7,000 bots, you know what I'm saying? Or if it's something more, or jumping into these other threads of thought, you're still actually participating in like an engagement around an idea that at some point ties to who you think you are in the world. So you may feel you need to say something. But again, like, my own internal editor tells me like I gotta triage which things are the places that I like. Again, like I need to really get the hairs on the back of my neck, steamed up about, and which ones is like, all right, man, let me say a couple points, and then I'm gonna move on, and I may never ever look at this post ever again because what am I doing, right? But when it gets to what he was saying around some of those that music related beef, I appreciated that he was like framing it like, look, there's certain stuff that's about some music. It's like this is professional music stuff. This is what you do, subliminal stuff, and then you say something and the other thing, but like we ain't really trying to kill nobody. Like, who would do that? Why would you do that? Why would you really want to hurt somebody else? Like, there's money to be made, and just it ain't worth it. You know what I mean? But it does, if you the one experiencing it, it does hurt. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, when he spoke about like the man insinuating that, I mean, we had sexual relations with his wife. He like, damn, like I would have rather he just know that you really did it. It was, you know what I mean? Like it was, I can tap into where that's a very human response to something like that I don't think we would appreciate. I don't think we typically appreciate somebody, kind of speaking to in a public forum, right? Like you might read that in the memoir 30 years later. Like I was really upset when he said that. It's like he said, he said it right now. Like this just happened.
Which almost cuts down everything else, because it's almost like, and I'm just not trying to dive into the whirlpool / cesspool, which is cancel culture, but he's almost making himself like Teflon, like in the sense of, hey, I'm outside with all my crazy shit from the beginning. So if you don't like what I got to say, that's cool. Because I'm not really hiding from what you think about me. And he'll say something just logical enough or just prescient enough to be like, oh wow, yeah. And then he say some crazy shit. He just goes back and forth. Like he'd be like, man, that's a good point. Oh wow, did you say that? Yeah, like
I got questions about that one, Kanye. Like the one thing But I think I thought it's also interesting because he definitely had, and again, this is for everyone that's listening that might be like, but he said, listen, there's a question about, to me, and even in, like right now for me, adding to the Justice Pantheon list. And when I get around to it, I will share the rest of y'all of things that I don't say. I don't say anything's politically correct. I've never, and I can tell you in a very long diatribe why. Maybe one day I'll spend time to record it, but let's just say it in short, that concept was inserted into the lexicon to undermine rightful discussion about change for Black people. It has no other value. Everything else is attached to that. If you go back to the conservatives that was kicking that in the 40s and 50s, I want to say that at least that's my entry point of it as an idea. It was not to have, they were actually trying to get to something that was correct politically. It was strictly to undermine arguments for change. And then we be restating it and saying it and accusing people of it anyway. So similarly, we have to be mindful of the way words are used, way language is structured to create ideas and frameworks. And it's something that I can see with Kanye, Ye, as he like to be referred, Ye, what up, Ye, is that he is experiencing the idea of people are really trying to influence him, right? Like he's not lying, I don't think, when he says like, yeah, nah, man, you get these people and they hire you, they talk to you crazy, you pay them and they talk to you crazy. You know what I'm saying? People just undermine your perspective, and usually they don't do it just in a way like I disagree with you. Not only do I disagree with you, something's wrong with you, right? I thought the statement where he said like they ain't like me, so they went and found all these other Kanyes. Now
Ooh.
now there might be a little bit of personal grandstanding there, maybe
Yeah.
maybe not, but
Yeah.
the general idea of the combo, the multi-platform artist as we understand it now was not something that people were supported in doing, even though, what I'm saying, going back to Wu-Tang and Wu-Wear, where they where I'm saying, where they took their creativity as it related to rap, to music, right, and moved it into clothing, I'm saying, and then now in the movies and now in the television, right? But when we was kids in 1988, if somebody told you Chuck D was going to start making and marketing and developing a brand of jeans to replace the Lees or Lees, you know what I'm saying? People
Right.
would laugh Chuck D out the door. People would in public go, there's no way he could understand the fashion industry, or if they wanted to go to the other side, the way manufacturing works. Like, right. But like now,
Right. With your dog whistles.
Right. All dog whistles, right? But now even down to if you call a little bit of the Griselda interview when there's on $1 million worth of game, and he's talking about, yeah, we started making clothes ourselves and selling them before we started making music, as teenagers, right? Like there's a whole lot of, and then they ain't the first ones, right? Like, but the idea now is supplanted that if someone is an artist in one field, that it is a bridge to being a general creative in whatever field they can have influence in. But that's an accepted
Right.
concept now. And I got tip the hat to Ye. Like, yeah, you're right. I mean, you ain't necessarily pulling on the wrong thread by saying.
And he doesn't. It's like he might pull on it too tight. He might pull on it too fast. You know what I mean? But he, again, and I think that's what makes some of what he says challenging to people, because I think in some ways, I'm gonna go forward, he pulls on some really important parts of Black traditions as a general idea. Yeah. Now, then it gets kind of scrambled with other stuff.
Yeah.
But at least his conversation about community, also aside the fact that neither Nori or EFN knew what a kibbutz was, is almost like the number one example of like, well, our school stuff ain't really working in America.
Right.
Because like you are 40-year-old men, millionaires that don't know what a kibbutz is. And so it's not even just that you didn't learn in school, is that you're not nowhere else with anyone who ever says the word kibbutz.
Right. You've obviously not been in any sustained conversation about it's like Palestine, Israel, and no. Like you've been part of none of them conversations because it would come up.
No. So I think that was just an aside. That tripped me out. Like, wait, I need it all this money? Anyway. But he pulls on some really important traditions and puts them in a line, which I think a lot of Black folks, whether it's the Black conservative tradition, and people, sometimes that's a little, it's anathema sometimes for us to talk about. Mm-hmm. But he pulls on the Black conservative tradition, not necessarily mean the Black Republican tradition.
Right.
But the Black conservative tradition. He pulls on the Black idea of business tradition, the idea of ownership. He pulls on these things in ways that I think there are people who be like, you know what? He's got a lot going on, but I got something out of what he's saying to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so some of the other wild stuff. I mean, one, the fact that Beans gave him the name Yeezy is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And also one of the interesting things, I guess, on the business tip was I don't know if you saw the Dame Dash conversation where
on Drink Champs.
Yeah. Where he said, so they had this thing called Slime Time, where Nori does that either or thing.
Yeah.
He does like, do you like this or this person? And they were like, Jay or Dame as a business person. And the homie was like 100% Dame Dash. He was like, Dame Dash is the original black hipster. Dame Dash is the visionary for all of this shit.
Mm-hmm,
He
mm-hmm.
was like, Dame Dash was trying to do this before I was trying to do it.
Yeah.
And he was like, and so anybody who don't like me taking care of Dame Dash, get over it, basically.
Yeah.
He said, I'm gonna take care of Dame Dash the day I die.
Yeah.
Which is something kind of going back to that longevity conversation, frankly,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
that you don't hear amongst the history of the like black music community.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Where someone was a progenitor, go
yeah.
ahead.
No, but I think it's something that's even, and I think just as maybe a complication of flummox to people to think about, because even within the span of the conversation, he basically shows that like he loved Dame, he loved like Jet, like he's
Right.
not operating in like I gotta pick one or the other, like because I think externally we would perceive those relationships as either you with Jay or you with Dame or you with you know what I mean, you with like Big is at
which real quickly, let me just say real quickly, means that one of them is right and one of them is wrong.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We do that to assume, and it comes from the place of, oh, is Jay-Z right because Jay-Z is successful?
Mm-hmm.
Is Dame Dash wrong because he's always in court? You see, I just wanted to put that in just as far as, like you said, that binary choice that in the 20 years since Rockefeller broke up, people are still making.
Right. And to me, it goes to a larger decision kind of making framework that I feel we're sometimes encouraged to exist in that you have to, right, there's clearly places to pick sides, right? Like there's circumstances, situations, usually they're acute and specific. But within the nature of the way most of our human relationships work, you're like, look, I'm out on this decision that this person in my life made. I still love them though.
Right.
I'm not happy. They crossed all of the lines. I don't know if I can have a regular conversation with them again. Also, I don't want to find out something terrible happened to them. Right. Like, or, and again, not always in such harsh consequences, but also it's like, look, I love both of them. Them two can't be together. But when I can see them, I go see them. And when I can see this one, right? Maybe down the line they'll find some place to reconcile, if it's even that way, right? Again, so I'm not speaking specifically about Dame and Jay because I don't know them brothers, and I assume they're grown enough men that however they exist, and they hopefully are okay with it. You know what I'm saying? But
I mean, you saw what
Jay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say you saw what Jay. Jay kind of gave kind of a probably the first olive branch to Dame in years at the Rock and Roll Awards, and then I guess Dame Dash, since he want to get out of court, was like, "Cool, yeah, man, this would be great. We could talk."
Straight up,
man. Lawyers cost me a lot of money, but no, go ahead, no.
Yeah,
to your point, I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the external world, typically, especially for Black folks, I think Black men and Black women, Black people in general, when we engage a lot of times with their apparatus, the pressure point to do things or to talk about us is to try to push us to endorse or support certain things or be against or for people, whatever they may be at the moment. So it's not super specific,
right.
But the experience of it is you get a thing where even in their time with the minimum amount that they knew each other, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X are constantly being asked about each other, right? Like as if that's the way to get to understand one or the other. That's not a question for them. That's a question that the people who those media apparatuses cared about. They didn't care about the well-being of Malcolm
either
X
of them
or Martin Luther King, right? And so when we get into, it's funny, dude. I did something I don't normally do this morning. I watched I watched Face the Nation, and I was listening.
Okay.
I wanted to hear how some reporting on the on the infrastructure deal and other stuff, and I was listening very closely to how the host, approached engaging around the infrastructure deal, and a lot of the questions were very pointed to like, you don't actually care about like the deliberative correct answer, so to speak, about any of these decisions. Like they're framed and stuff like, how, framed part of the conversation was framed in like how panicked should Democrats be about the next election, right? Not about the moment, not about if the bill was good for society, not about the details of what's in this, but around what some other vote in another year should be, right? That's an editorial choice. You know what I'm saying? That's like if you go, sometime this week, you know what I'm saying? If I maybe catch up with your pops, and then I ask him about something's happening in North Philly. And then my question audibly goes to something like, road construction or whatever else. I'm choosing to frame our conversation around something that I think is important, right? Maybe not necessarily, not the same thing as me asking him, just what's happening. What does he see that's important, right? Those are not the same thing. If he starts telling me, different pieces and parts, and then we go deeper into that. But if I came in because I had some predetermined interests about North Philly and I wanted him to be my proxy to give me the information, right? I might ask that question in a way that points to very specific outcomes. And that's a lot of times, especially for Black folks, that's what we experience in the entertainment media for sure. There's a whole industry built off of, the Black gossip media is one of the entry points in our, and I hope none of these particular entities see gossip media as a negative, but gossip, blavity, shade room, there's several, I can't remember, there's another one I can't remember, whatever that network that the dude who I can't remember his name, but I just saw a clip, he talking to the influencer, what's her name, Brittany's whatever, and right, like those are entities that are predicated on sort of this entertainment gossip conversation of what when we were kids would have been the People Magazine, Entertainment Tonight, Inside Edition variety. You know what I'm saying? But now there's all these other vehicles for it. World Star, like all these things have a built-in piece around sort of this weird, very often not necessarily uplifting. And I guess some of those I would say actually are pretty uplifting. Blavity is probably not, it's the least negative of any of those. If you read some of the stuff, The Root, at least what it became, The Root being a little bit more high-minded under the Huffington Post and all that, I guess NBC now, or I think it's NBC, one of them. Anyway, where it's like, the lean is the Black issues, but, they don't necessarily trade as heavily in the like, this Black person may not be Black enough for us. This Black person don't love Black people the way Black people think, right? But there's a whole industry that's built on the like, whose side are you on, Jay-Z or Dame Dashes?
Or Dame, yeah, that's right.
Do you like Kanye or do you like Drake? Do you like, what I'm saying? And it's
like the business decisions. Here's my thing. We are often making editorial decisions about the business and the personal conversations to which most of us will never be privy. And even if we were privy, it would be a case study in how you would respond. Mm-hmm. If someone was, for better or for worse, harmful to your business, do you depart from them, right? But we all know, people in our families, oh man, and nobody's supposed to buy this thing together, buy this boat together, man. But you acting too crazy, so I'm not buying the boat with you. We do that all the time. Right.
We were supposed to go to the Essence Fest together, but I ain't going with you now because you.
I ain't going with you now because you got to spend your money in. That's right. People make them decisions every day, but when we're thinking about two people who had business and a lot of intertwined personal connections, we editorialize and then editorialize on the relationship. So to your point, I think, even in his stridentness, I think Kanye sets a different bar, right? He sets a bar like, no, I'm both of them. I love both of them. Jay's the boss. No problem.
Yeah, like
no conversation with Jay. No problem with Jay. But I can still say Jay's selfish because Jay knows he's selfish.
Right. And y'all all know Jay.
And y'all all know Jay's selfish. So what's the problem? Y'all know I'm crazy and y'all know Jay's selfish. So to me, there was like a level setting for a lot of that, or even that Drake practices psychological terror.
He started talking about he DMing, he did like it's not no way I would approach life, but I could imagine somebody else maybe going, especially, I mean, you watch shows like, Succession and some of these other, like, if you had the means and the resources to pay other, people to spend all day trying to figure out who was like your main man's girlfriend to send her a crazy DM to cause some sort of disturbance in your world, right? Like, I wouldn't approach life like that. But I guess if you got the means at the time and that's how you think, like, oh wow, I never thought
Listen, when
about that.
Drake when Drake and Meek had their beef, they said he was staying in Toronto. Meek was staying in Toronto, and Drake brought out the entire floor above him and played the song all night. Wouldn't let him sleep. He played back to back all night. Can you imagine somebody buying out a floor to psychologically terrorize you?
Yeah, that's a cold piece right there. That's
That's
like,
a cold dude, man. That's a cold. This is a dude that proclaims to be the most emotionally underengaged women, and then he is practicing psychological terror on dudes through their relationships.
right.
That, like you said, that's a cold piece
Like
right there, man.
that ain't the way I move through the world, but if that's who you are, that's what we got. You know what I'm saying? We gotta just that's what we're dealing with. And I think sometimes, even in our current sort of analysis publicly around like what happens in our society, there's this tendency to like remove the fact, like, if the way someone is not the way you think they should be, it's a good thing for you to understand, especially so that you can evaluate what you're going to do. However, that is who they are. Like, if someone to show you who they are and you try to act like they're not that or they should be this other person, and then you try to deal with them, you're going to get the analysis wrong every time because you thinking they're going to be some other person, but they're not going to be that person. They're going to be the person they are. You know what I'm saying? And I'll extrapolate that to say to the fake, the totally fabricated CRT controversies, the way a certain constituency, and unfortunately, a broad constituency of people use the idea of woke. Like, it ain't got really nothing to do with what the reality of those things are, but it has everything to do with who those people are. And some of us should know better. I ain't say everybody should, but some of us should be like, wait a minute, man, I've been, I've been black my whole life. There's certain stuff I'm like, for real? You just came at me with that? Like, I you know what I'm saying? I like, nah, man, I'm not putting that banana in my tailpipe. Like, like, come on, dog. Like, you got to get up a little earlier in the morning if you was trying to get me a reaction out of me on that. Are you gonna have me? Oh, come on, man, you tripping. You know what I mean? And that gets into, when I'm embarrassed at the things that something like, wow, you ain't know nothing about that. You was up here talking. You ain't never had no conversation where you know what a kibbutz was. Damn, brother. Then let's have a coffee after this so we can work on your back, what you're doing in your offline time, so you could be ready. How much you know about the way the rest of the world works, or other things that just are salient and important. But also, I think the thing I was going towards before that was like, just to get back to the interview, there's something to, again, him being honest, and even in the things they're like, man, they're gonna cut me off, they're gonna try to shut me down. And we know this idea of, if you say too much of what you really think, typically, unfortunately, it's kind of, I would say it's been wrangled by those who have the most, sometimes, quite frankly, absurd things to say, right? In our macros, in our larger, broader culture of like, but there is a real cost sometimes when you say, I referenced the Outcast. I think it was Big Boy verse. Where they shut you down when you tell them how you really feel. Like, you say something how you was really on your heart. There's some people that are either they're gonna penalize you for that. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
People,
right.
we know that. Anyone that's done any kind of civic leadership knows that. Anybody, if you've ever made a creative product of some kind, you know that. And it doesn't mean that how you feel is necessarily right or is not due to be criticized, but it's about the idea that there's a potential that always exists when you are very true to what you are thinking and want to share it, that you will be penalized, especially as a person from our community, and not necessarily always on no fair, terms or no rubric that is actually assessing the idea, but as much as assessing, are you allowed to say that? Do we give you the runway, or if we punish you for saying it, will anything happen to us? And there's a long history of if you was a black man in the 30s telling people that the New Deal wasn't really helping enough black people. You know what I'm saying? It's like people would be like, man, whatever we gave y'all is all y'all had to do. You know what I'm saying? And we can afford to punish you. You know what I'm saying? Unless what? If you ate Philip Randolph, you had the sleeper car porters, you had a constituency that could take care of you.
Right.
That could protect you, right? You know what I'm saying? If I bring up to folks, like I said, I've been reading something, I think I told you about this. It was like talking about Marcus Garvey, and Philip Randolph wasn't feeling him. Now a lot of us love Garvey, and there's some great stuff in Garvey's reading and writing. There's also some really hard questions asked about Garvey for somebody that never actually ran a government, about how the world was going to work. Like, never actually ran a society that had to like take care of itself.
Right.
Right. There's some things to challenge. Doesn't mean that you throw Garvey out the water. Doesn't say that Garveyism is wrong. It means if we're going to be healthy, we got to look at it and go, what did this leader who was making this movement, if he had a fair criticism about this other leader, what was the actual criticism? Was it personal, or was it about a way about practice or ideas? And it's okay for us to look at both of them, look at all of what they're talking about, and take the best part for ourselves, and not get caught up in feeling like I got to pick one or the other, or this one, I love this uncle more than that uncle. Like, you don't got to do that. Right. You got to look at them and go, all right, man, both of y'all is my uncles, and both of y'all that made some choices. I agree with some of your choices. I don't agree with some of your choices. Yeah, let me take the good stuff from this and then leave the space for you to be who you are on your own. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Man. So I don't know what else. I was going to say something else.
No, I think just given that, for anyone if you may have seen pieces of it, but it's hilarious. It's cringy. It's all those things at one time. It's kind of like any kind of experience you want to have, you can have it in the 2+ hours of listening to the Ye interview. But I do think it was important to hear some of his vantage points, especially in the broader context of music and just, within reason, people controlling communication outlets to be able to have a conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something I wanted to make sure we elevate. And I guess something that just came to me too is just opposed to our conversation about verses, which I enjoy, but 2.5 hours is a long time of verses, of like performing, right? But like 2.5 hours of talking, not as bad. A lot easier to kind of mellow in and doing what you're doing. So just an observation, not a judgment or a decision. Just something I just want to put out there for the record.
My man. Yes, sir.
So I don't know. With that, anything else to add before we depart?
No, all good.
All right. So with that, I'm saying peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Good Brothers. Thank you to my good brother, I'm Majestic. Thank you to you, the listeners. I try to record regularly, and as we're still in this developmental transitional space, I appreciate you continuing to support the podcast, in the most exciting way, in the most easiest way, or the most direct way, which is by listening. The next way is by sharing with a friend, recommending. And the next way, that is maybe not necessarily less important or more important, is by financially contributing to the show. You can become a patron. Just search Justice Rajee on Patreon and find a level that works for you. You can also hit the Etsy shop. I'm planning to update the sweatshirts, some other things, but like I said, I'm in a transitional developmental space right now, so things will come as they come. But grabbing a sweatshirt, puts a hard chunk into, takes about a month of streaming costs off the table for your man. So in any event, I appreciate you for listening. Always feel free to give feedback directly. You can find me at Justice Rajee on most places on the internets. And you can also, just do that. Just search Justice Rajee and figure out what social media vehicle works best for you, or send an email to, ashyoldhead@gmail.com. Yeah, that's a new wrinkle, so not really. But in any event, man, be safe. Enjoy this fall, beautiful autumn weather. You know what I'm saying? And get ready for the briskness. You know what I'm saying? So with that, I say peace.